What if the biggest thing standing in the way between you and the life you want is lack of self-trust? Welcome to the Self-Authority Podcast. I'm your host, Elaine Belson, the Self-Authority Coach. Today, I'm joined by Intuitive Oracle and the founder of the new EI, Energetic Intelligence, Wendy Page Sterling. Wendy shares how years of reading the room, adapting to other people's expectations, and seeking external validation led her to losing touch with her inner voice, and how listening to herself transformed her life and the way she helps other people. In this conversation, we explore self-trust, intuition, emotional versus energetic intelligence, and why the answers you're searching for often aren't outside of you at all. Here's my conversation with Wendy Page Sterling. Welcome, Wendy Sterling, to the Self-Authority Podcast.
Thank you so much, Elaine. I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited to have a conversation with you today.
Thank you. Yes, me too. So we're going to be talking about self-trust, but I wanted to start with a story. So what story do you have for us?
Well, the story I have is one that I hope your listeners will be able to relate to the emotions behind, right? Not always necessarily the story itself. So I don't know about you, Elaine, but I spent 20 years in corporate leadership, executive teams, building multi-million-dollar regions from the ground up. And I was able to do that very successfully because I knew how to read people. I knew how to understand people. I knew how to anticipate what was needed based on how I would look around a room. I knew how to adapt really fast, how to become the version of myself in each room, and feeling the rewards of playing a part. And that gift really helped me to build teams. It helped me to build multi-million-dollar regions. It helped me to become very successful. And it also helped me to create an amazing life for myself that I had created, where I found, my now ex-husband, but where I found my husband. I had been trained from very early on as a little girl to be the version of Wendy that everybody saw me to be. Prior to that, I was very precocious. I was a disruptor as a little girl. But I quickly started to see how that was becoming an issue. And I developed a narrative around myself that if I kept acting this way, if I kept choosing me, I was going to be disowned by my family. And so I very quickly, as a little girl, started becoming aware that I wasn't accepted as who I was. And so I started becoming this version of me that my family approved of. And it was always something I learned to be based on seeking out their reactions to who I was being in different moments. And so what I spent 4 decades doing was being really good at reading rooms and reading people. And what I had stopped doing was reading myself and really paying attention to my inner signal. And obviously that pattern began very, very early on. And it served me because, I wasn't disowned by my family. I found this amazing man. We had, still have 2 beautiful children together. And I developed this narrative around, well, if I live into that version of me, I will be safe. I will be successful. I will have family, right? And so quickly, the adaptation that I took on kept being rewarded.
Right.
And so I continued to live in that vein until the day where the rug of that facade life came out from underneath me. And I realized that my 16-year marriage was over. And it was really in that moment that connection to myself came back online. And I took the next year to really explore, what does this mean? What does it feel like, having been separated from, he was my best friend and the father of my children, and really started leaning in and figuring out who the heck I was. And it was an interesting experience because it was one that opened my eyes to the world of life coaching. I had been in therapy, and while therapy was really helpful, what life coaching brought into my life was a way to envision what was possible for me and to really start leaning into my own dreams and what it was that I really wanted in life. And so what I started realizing was that I spent my entire life calculating what people expected of me. And what I was starting to feel instead was what it was like to actually make choices that felt good to me and see my world start calibrating around that. And that was something that I quickly learned in a matter of, the year that I was separated. And in that moment, I realized that choosing me meant that the world was going to calibrate around what that choice, and it was going to look however it was going to look. And yes, I knew it was going to look different. But I have to tell you that there was a cost of constantly looking outside of myself that I had to sort of break up with as well. And so my divorce ended up being the wake-up call that I needed, not only to reconnect back with myself and to know what choosing myself felt like, but what it also showed me was that the external structures that we rely upon are actually just an illusion. It's an illusion that we create, that we make concrete, that really are not walls to begin with. And so I quickly started bringing what I call my own energetic intelligence back online, by, instead of walking into a room and, old EI, old EQ taught us how to read a room, how to adjust, how to respond. But suddenly in this moment, I really started realizing, wait a second, what is it that I know about myself that the room gets to know about me, and let the room figure it out, right? Instead of it always being
Mhm.
me. And
Yeah.
so I would say that that was really the foundation for me in terms of how it was that I was able to really start recognizing the patterns that I had inherited that were never mine to begin with, and to start living life in reality instead of living my life through other people's eyes.
Mhm. Wow. You mentioned that it was safe, that your original, approach of trying to mold yourself into what other people expected of you, that felt safe, but it was at a cost. You wanna talk a little bit more about that? What do you mean by it felt safe, and then what was the cost to that?
Yeah, I mean, it felt safe because, imagine, this fear of like losing your family, right? Family was everything. I was one of the values I was raised in, in my home. I remember my mom and my grandparents really always reiterating to me, family first, family's important. It's all about your family. And, for me, if I didn't play, I'll say it this way, right? If I didn't play their game, I was going to lose my family. So
Mhm.
and I didn't wanna lose my family. I was like, "Who else did I have? Where was I gonna go? Who was gonna love me?" And so the cost was, well, I'm gonna lose everybody else if I choose myself, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what the cost was that, and then ultimately later on realizing, well, the cost of losing myself was a lot greater than, what I thought a cost was going to be, right? It's almost like looking back, like, would my family really have disowned me? Would they have really, like, it was a threat. And that kind of opened the doorway, or I should say, it just kind of opened up my ability to just see how I was raised in a home and in a narrative that was all about control. It was about, how do we use our words to control? And again, that playing a role in, well, your words are powerful, and your words have meaning, and your words can be used in a certain way. And so I started creating this narrative around control and language and feeling like, well, the hotter the words, meaning the more threatening or the more that you're trying to hurt other people, the more that you have them sort of in this web of control. And it gave me this false sense of security because it was almost like if I speak it this way, then people will listen. People will do what I want. And, that's how you walk in and you command a
Right.
room because that's what I learned. And what I started to realize was that it was not only costing me, well, I'll say it this way, it was costing me connection. It was creating, I'll say, distance for me and other people. And that was the opposite, right? It was creating the opposite effect of what I actually really intended, which was to feel loved, to feel accepted, to feel a part of things. And it's just so interesting because it's also kind of become this foundation of my work where it's like it's almost like these narratives create these illusions that we live into, and
Mm-hmm.
it perpetuates an existence and how it is that we show up in the world. And at the end of the day, it is just that. It's an illusion, and that these narratives never really belong to us. And it's about remembering that those voices are not yours. They were never yours to begin with. They were given to you, but you've morphed them into being your voice. And a lot of what
Mm-hmm.
I do and the work that I do is
Yep.
around remembering that, number one, they were never yours to begin with. And number two, remembering what it is that you sound like, what it is that is your voice, and leading from that place and starting to see that the room will calibrate around you. The people that are meant to find you will find you. They will be drawn to you. And that really is the foundation for, the work that I do under the new EI.
Right. So you mentioned about finding your voice, and that's one of the things that I really like about your approach because that really fits in with self-authority. You talk about making decisions from a place of self-trust. And, one of the things that I talk about is how our bodies provide us with information, right? Our feelings provide us with information. And so, can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by finding your voice and where that comes from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as I was talking about before, we have narratives that live in our head, and we assume that they all belong to us. And each of those narratives has what I'll call a frequency. It has a vibration with it. And I think, we've been growing up, or at least I'll say I've grown up, and I think a lot of us have been trained to, it's mind over body, mind over body. And
Absolutely.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly because
Yep.
your body speaks to you first, and then your mind creates a narrative. And it upsets me because it means that we're numbing out and we're not paying attention to our own bodies.
Mhm.
And when we tap back in, when we remember, when we slow down and we go inward and we wonder, okay, not only where am I feeling that in my body, but what does that sensation feel like? Is it calm? Is it quiet? Does it feel just like this little like, what was that? Or does it come roaring in, loud, chaotic, anxiety driven, fear, resentment, judgment, right? And even just describing those two things, you can feel the energy difference between the two.
Right.
And so what I help my clients to realize is what is their voice, which is their intuition, versus what is a narrative that has been thrown upon them that is now coming through as a voice of fear, resentment, judgment, doubt, anxiety, etc., right?
Mhm.
And so to start paying attention to where that is for you, it's going to be different for everybody, right? Like all my clients tell me different things. For me, I feel my own voice and my intuition speaks to me. It's like from my gut and it like ripples up to my heart. It's this feeling I can't explain other than that, right? Versus when I'm feeling fear or resentment, I feel tightness in my chest all the way up to my throat. And so when we start slowing down and recognizing, okay, whose voice is this really? Is it the voice of intuition? Is it the voice of fear? Intuition, it's you. If it's fear, it does not belong to you. And to start recognizing those signals within your own body, right? And so, I think that the hardest part that a lot of us have, and I was actually at a networking event yesterday, and a woman even said this to me. She's like, gosh, she's like, we really don't take the time to slow down, right? This event was a yoga event and it was a networking event doing yoga, right? And it's like, oh God, we don't really do this very often for ourselves. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's really sad because how else do you hear yourself think? How do you hear what is in your highest and best if you are not doing more of this, which just further shows how we have all really adopted this, hustle mentality that, checking stuff off of our list and getting all of this stuff done. And effectively, what that's done is it's created distance between you and trusting yourself, right? If you're leading from fear, it tells me that you don't trust what your own inner knowing is trying to tell you, versus when you lead from your intuition, that tells me that you have a really strong connection to yourself and that you lead from that place because you trust it, right? And the one point that I want to say about that is that self-trust is not about becoming more certain before you move, right? So many of us are out there waiting for the evidence and we don't move because the evidence doesn't appear, or fear is coming in and going, nope, remember the last time, even though the last time has nothing to do with this time. But remember the last time where it kind of looked this way, and remember what happened, even though it has nothing to do with this, right? But you start paying attention to that logic. Self-trust is about learning how to recognize the signal in your body when it's speaking to you and having the courage to act from that place before the evidence appears. Because what happens is when you act from that inner knowing, from that intelligence within that trust, the evidence is going to come after the fact. And so it's really coming back to kind of that illusion. It's like we've got to flip the script on this, that in order for us to really dive in and really start trusting ourselves fully, you've got to trust the nudge, you've got to trust that inner knowing, and also trust that the evidence is going to come after the fact. And so it's hard for a lot of us because it's not how we typically operate. But I'll tell you, the way that I've been leading from that place, for the last decade of my life. And it's uncertain, but yet so certain at the same time, right? So the certainty comes after the fact, even when you don't necessarily get a result that you want, that you get pivoted and you're like, oh, I never even saw that was a possibility. Okay, let's go down that path. Because at the end of the day, divine has a much better plan than we do. And if we choose to lean into the fear, we're going to miss the beauty of what divine has in store. And, I'll even say that you're prolonging your ability to have what it is that you want when you take the long fear route versus when you take the shortcut, which is following your intuition.
Okay. Yeah. And when you don't trust yourself, then you never learn that you can trust yourself, right? If you don't take that leap of faith. So, and you talked about that voice versus things like fear. So help us to understand, what is the difference between emotional intelligence and energetic intelligence?
Yeah, I love this question because it's obviously the cornerstone of my work.
Right.
Right. And so, anytime I walk into a room or I have a conversation with people, right, you always walk in and you're like, okay, how many of you will say that you understand what EQ is, right? We all know what emotional intelligence is, right? Emotional intelligence is like, I can walk into a room and I can read a room, right? Great skills, right? You know how to walk up to a group of people and start adapting to the people that are in the circle that you're choosing to engage in. When we are operating from emotional intelligence, a lot of times we're also kind of polling people, we're polling the room. And when we are defaulting into the old EQ, it's typically from the lens of, and the question is the lens that you see the old EQ from, is how do I respond appropriately? Right? So the old EI and EQ is all around how do I calculate what's happening in front of me and how do I morph to fit in? How do I bring myself into these situations, right? So the old EQ, EI, the E is all about your emotion, right? So
Yes.
it's about how do I react? If it's tense, if it's chaotic, right? The I is all about where's the proof, the intelligence, right? The proof, the data, the sources. How is
Mm-hmm.
it that I have evidence? And so because of that evidence, I'm going to, be this way in this room. So you're in this, like, it's very much about like, how do I, as a square, fit into a triangular, space? So I'm just going to snip two of my sides so that I fit in, and I'm going to leave those two out. Well, the two things that you're leaving out are the most important things. So what I'm saying, and what I have, sort of the download that I got of really what is required of us as we step into our leadership, and really what is important for us to really break through the ceilings that many of us highly successful, high achievers come up against, is it's really about calibration. It's not calculation. It is about calibration. So the new EI is energetic intelligence, where the E is all about embodied awareness and the I is about leading from your inner authority. So what does that mean? It means that you are leading from yourself first. It means that you are acting from clarity of who it is that you be. It means that I am making decisions from within based on what it is that I already know. So you walk into a room, you are walking into a room being who it is that you are, and trusting that your energy of being who you are is going to direct you and show you who it is that you are going to connect with. So for example, I walked into a room yesterday. I walked up to a group of women where I could feel and read the energy of the three women that were standing in front of me, and I knew exactly which one, there was only one, that was going to get me. Now, emotional intelligence, old school, would have been like, ooh, I'm going to downplay, who I am. I'm going to downplay and not tell everyone that I'm an intuitive oracle. I'm just going to say that I'm a leadership coach. Versus when you walk in commanding your energetic intelligence, I walked up to that group and I said, hi, I'm Wendy Sterling. I am an intuitive oracle, and this is how I help women. I could see the two faces of the women go, she's woo, not my jam. And one of the women go, oh my God, that's so cool. Tell me more. And so when you're leading from that energetic intelligence, you don't care what those two other people say. You're just
Mm-hmm.
all in on, this is who I am. This is who I be, because this is what I already know about myself. So when you are leading from that embodied awareness, you are steady, you are calm, you're at ease, because you know who you are. You know how well you do and
Mm-hmm.
be who you are, right? Versus, you're looking for people to like accept you and want to keep talking to you, right? So walking in, embodying your own energetic intelligence means that you trust who you are, and you trust that your people are going to connect with you
Right.
before you see evidence or proof. And so that is to me, like, that is how we all get to move through this world, is understanding that the room is going to calibrate to you. And yes, the room may go from this to this. However, this is way more powerful than this in terms of how it is that you get to move through, how it is that you get to continue to make an impact. And if you worry about the entire room, you're going to get diluted. So if you want to
Right.
keep your signal as strong, your voice as strong as possible, you've got to trust that your people are going to find you and you're going to carry through, and know how it is that you are meant to either work with these people, get referrals from these people, how you can collaborate, etc., and to receive that abundance and that success that all of us are looking for in this life.
Yeah, I really like that. I like the fact that what you're talking about is attracting the people that you're meant to be with or meant to serve, as
Right.
opposed to trying to be all things to all people. and using yourself as a way of attracting people, right?
Exactly.
You talk about recognizing when something feels off and seeing that as information. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So, I'll actually say it in a story, and one that I didn't mention at the start, but I think fits in
Yeah.
really beautifully now, if that's okay. Um, you know, we all go through these moments where something feels off, right? It could be even these moments where your body says no and somehow your mouth is saying yes before you even realize what's coming out of your mouth, right? And I want to first say that it doesn't mean that something is wrong, right? I think that we attach, a polarity to this information, right, that we are receiving. And it's just information, right? And we're the ones that have control over what we do with it. Now, I had been, this was back in, gosh, it was 2022, I want to say. It was back about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And right after my mom passed away, I sort of had this moment of like, you know what? Life is short. I've been doing this divorce coaching, created a really successful career, but I couldn't do it anymore. Something in my body felt really off. And I remember I fought it. I fought it because I was like, what are you doing? You built this 7-figure business. You're crazy. You cannot walk away from this. Like, what are you doing? And I took about a year and a half after my mom died to just kind of I was trying to care and trying to pretend that I wanted to still be a divorce coach because I thought to myself, well, my mom just died. My world was spinning and it was really impactful, but I was ignoring it. And what I realized now in hindsight of what I was actually ignoring was that I was done, that it was time for me to move on. It was time for me to get out of that divorce field. And I kept ignoring it. And so I pushed through and even getting one client felt 10 times harder than it used to when I would be in flow. And all of a sudden I would get this influx of like 5 to 6 clients overnight, right? Being able to create 7 figures in less than 6 weeks. And I couldn't duplicate it. And so what ended up happening was I kept getting signs from the universe. I was in Egypt. I was having these experiences where it was very evident that it was time for me to move on, to leave the divorce niche. And I would say, my mind, my head, my emotional intelligence would tell me, you're crazy. You cannot do that. Other people were telling me that I couldn't do that. I had another signal come through or another sign come through when I was in Puerto Rico in the form of a song that came on randomly that was called Burn the House Down. And I was like, what? Like, what is this? Right. And then finally, my family and I we were in Maui the year that the fires in Lahaina happened. And we were more than just in Maui. We were literally in the fire. We were coming back from being gone and the fires were starting to come through where we were staying and we were trying to get back to our hotel and we couldn't get back. And we got ourselves kind of mixed up in the residential area of Lahaina itself, where we had to basically kind of off-road a little bit to get ourselves out because everybody was trying to leave. There's kind of not a lot of ways to get in and out of Lahaina for those of you who have ever been there. And I remember we finally got ourselves to the highway. And I remember I looked at my husband, my second husband, and I looked at him and and I'm just like, oh my God, what is happening? And all of a sudden the fire crosses the highway. It goes from like the top of Lahaina and it's starting to go down the mountain. And I looked at him as the fire's crossing over and I looked at him and I said, I'm burning it down. And he's like, what? I was like, divorce coaching, we're done. I said, I can't do this anymore. I've been fighting and I have to give in. I was like, look at what's happening around us. I've got to listen to what feels best for me. And I'm like, I'm starting a new business when we get home. And he just looked at me and he was like, okay, like we're going to leave. We're going to keep leaving. Right. And I kid you not, the second that I got home And I started speaking from the lens of really talking to women more broadly, right? But highly successful, high achieving women about, again, similar to what I was doing as a divorce coach, where it was all about learning self-trust through voice, where all of a sudden I started leaning into and being this version of who I was. I was owning all of these parts of myself. I felt like I was hiding who I was as, in the vein of divorce coach. But really who I was someone who knew how to read people, someone who knew how to be a mirror for others and how to help people to access that intuitive part of themselves. And so I had been trying to drown out these parts of me that I was afraid of the judgment of what the world would say. But at the same time, the way that it was manifesting in the world was like, I just felt so off and my energy was off and people could feel it. And it's why I wasn't getting clients. And so what I hope that people hear is that obviously it takes what it takes for you to start paying attention and for you to start listening. But the moment you feel that dissonance in your body, that is information. It is a signal. It is something to start paying attention to. And again, what I said before, it's really about making the move before you have the evidence. The evidence came immediately thereafter. The second that I made that choice, I got back to 6 figures in 6 weeks. I hadn't made 6 figures that entire 6 months before. And so I say that again, it's important for you to come back to just recognize the signal as just being something that is information. And then you then have the power to decide, well, what am I going to do with that? What's the narrative that I want to take forward versus, well, let me get everybody's approval before I really make a decision, or I'm just going to keep avoiding it because we think it's easier to just stay where we are. Well, sure, but how's that serving you? And really, it's a false sense of ease. And the ease is actually on the other side, right? It's this inverse relationship that it's the inverse. Like what you see as easy is actually hard, and what you see as hard is actually easy. So it's really about rewiring your energetic intelligence system to be able to start seeing things in the opposite vein, if that makes sense.
Okay. I want to go back to emotional intelligence for a minute because one of the things that I incorporate in is this idea that emotions are information, like you talked about, of a need or a threat that we're overlooking, just like pain or hunger. And that, like you were saying, what we often do is we get caught up in the thought process, the analyzing or discounting, right, our feelings. And so what I'm trying to understand is the differences with emotions. What I usually tell people is that, what you want to do is you want to tune into the emotions and what they're trying to tell you. First of all, what emotion is it? What is it specifically that's causing it? And then what's in your control and to get them to problem solve, right? So how would that be different than if I were sensing something, in terms of my energy? Can you explain that?
I think so. And tell me if I'm understanding your question correctly or
Mm-hmm.
not. So emotion is absolutely important. It is important to name. It is important to be aware. It is important to possess the language to be able to identify whatever that emotion is, right?
Mm-hmm.
What energetic intelligence is, it's kind of the next step after that, right? So EQ is required in order to kind of take that next step into energetic intelligence. So when you're naming, let's say, some said emotion, then the next step is, okay, is that really how I feel, or is this how I'm told I'm supposed to feel?
Mm-hmm.
So it could even be as simple as, you wake up and you're like, man, I just really want pancakes with loads of syrup and powdered sugar and berries on top. And then you're like, oh, that sounds so good. And then you're like, nope, carbs, fat, gaining weight, right? And then you're like, I should just have egg whites scrambled with vegetables, no oil, right?
Toast.
And then you're like, womp womp, right? It's like, and I use that example because the energetic intelligence your body really wants pancakes. Now, I'm not telling you to eat the pancakes, okay? I'm not telling you to have the egg whites either. You do you, boo. However, I use that example because it speaks to not just the emotion, but the energy behind it, right? Your emotion behind the pancake is, man, that sounds super yummy. And then the energy behind it is calm, right? Versus then you think about the egg whites and you're like, well, that's the right choice. And you feel the energetic difference between the two. Now, in every situation, you have the choice to lead with whatever energy it is that you decide. Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. But the energetic intelligence piece, it is the undercurrent underneath it, right? So when you're walking into a room, it is important for you to be able to read a room. I'm not saying that reading a room, that is emotional intelligence. The piece after that with the energetic intelligence is, how are you going to show up in that room? So you're reading it and you're identifying it. And then it's a matter of, okay, well, I'm walking up to this group of people. Well, I'm feeling uncomfortable with these two, but this one, I'm like, girlfriend, we're going to be besties. So in that moment, your emotional intelligence could tell you to just be like, okay, just tell everyone you're a leadership coach. And then you're staying in the emotional intelligence versus you going, yeah, those two people are not me, but this one is. And I'm going to show up because this one's going to get me and I don't care about those other two. So it's in those moments where it's almost like your energetic intelligence is where you should be leading. Like if you're deciding to shrink yourself in a group of people because emotionally you're like, ooh, they're not going to like me, and you're finding yourself shrinking, that is you giving in to sort of the old way of calculating versus recognizing the emotion and being like, oh, that's data to tell me that like I actually get to stand in my power and be who I am. And I don't care what they think. And so I'm not going to care what they think because there's one person here who will. So I am just going to focus on this one person and stand in my power of being and know that this is the woman I'm here to meet today. So I hope that answers your question, but it's really about making decisions from an embodied self-trust versus being in performance conditioning or feeling pressure, and understanding that your body is just giving you data.
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like the idea of following your energy, because that's what's going to make us probably most successful.
Yes.
It's certainly the thing that we're going to be most motivated, right? Is when we follow our energy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a both and, right?
Right.
They're both required, but a lot of us stop at EQ. And what I'm saying is that you've got to keep going and lean into the energetic piece and allow that to sort of accelerate you in terms of the results that you want. Because if you just stay in that emotional intelligence space alone, it's going to take you longer to get where it is that you desire versus if you take that next step and you really embody your own energetic intelligence and lead from that place, it's actually going to accelerate your results and it's going to take you where it is that you want to go a lot faster. It's going to allow you to have a greater impact a lot faster. It's going to shine your light brighter, etc.
Okay. So with those who are listening, what would you say is a good first step to following their energetic intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would say, it's an awareness game, right? And so the first thing is I would just invite you to just slow down. Like in these moments where people are asking you a question or you have a decision or, you're deciding what you want to have for lunch today, is just to really slow it down. Gift yourself with this moment of pause so that you can get aware and get back into your own body to discern what it is that is actually your own voice versus what is fear or somebody else's that you've taken on as your own. Because again, it's really all about what is it that I already know to be true instead of what is it that I need someone else to confirm. And so to really get clear and to come into your body and start recognizing where is it that my own voice lives, aka your intuition, versus where is it in your body where fear is the voice, and to start recognizing what is where, and to just pay attention, right? I feel like we think that we have to go from like A to Z and be like, I made it, instead of looking at, oh, wait, what's A to B? And then what's B to C? And actually celebrating once you get to the A to the B. So to me, if you can just slow yourself down, that's step one. Step number
Mm-hmm.
two, if you want to go after you slow down and then go, okay, where am I feeling this in my body? Oh, well, this is in my heart. Well, that must be my intuition. Oh, wait, I feel this is like I just got like smacked in the gut and, not in the good way. Or, I've had clients say that like logic is like all of a sudden they feel like this massive pain in their head or fog in their head. And they're like, okay, wait, that's fear. And so just those two little things are going to make all the difference and will start for you to like strengthen, right? It's like a muscle. You go to the gym, you don't lift the 20-pound weight. You like
Right.
start with the threes or you start with the fives and you build your way up. And so I would invite you to start treating your energetic intelligence the same way that you would treat how you walk into a gym and start lifting weights.
Right. Okay. So do women do you find that women have a hard time with finding that energy inside of them and trusting it?
So the moment that it's a kind of a yes and no. And I'll say it this way. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us have really strong intuitive sense in certain areas of our life. And typically where we say we disconnect is in those higher stake decision moments. And it's in those higher stake, whatever you call high stake, right? Higher stake decision moments, whether that's in your life or in your business, that's when we default back into, seeking permission, polling people, looking for permission, right? And there's a difference. If you're seeking permission to move forward with your decision, that tells me that you're in fear, versus if you're actually just looking for advice and you're speaking from a lens of, hey, I'm doing this. Is there something that I'm not thinking about or seeing that I need to know as I move forward in this decision, right? When you're seeking advice, it's just information that it's not about you getting information to get permission. It's around, help me see some other sides to this so that I'm equipped, right? And there's a difference between when you're seeking permission versus when you're seeking advice. And I think even those two words alone make a little bit of a difference. But what I
Or
would say is,
reassurance?
say that again?
Permission or reassurance?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so it's typically in those higher stake decisions is where women feel less connected versus in the lower stake decisions. And so that's kind of, it's like, I feel like we all come up against that. And it's based
Mhm.
on what level of, whatever outcome is on the other side, whether it's high or low stake, that's when we start disconnecting from that knowing.
So, do you have any parting words for everyone?
So what I would say to those of you who are listening to today's conversation is I would invite you the next time that you guys walk into a room is to just notice how it is that you walk in. And notice what it is that you are feeling when you are walking in. Okay. And that could also be a virtual room. It doesn't have to necessarily be, a physical space, but just notice what it is that you're feeling. What are the narratives that are coming up in your mind before, the host brings you into the room or before you really walk in? And I would invite you to just take a breath and really ask yourself, is any of this true? Is whatever it is that's coming to mind right now true? And to remember that there are other people that are, coming from a similar lens that you are, where they're walking in and wanting to have the room see you. And the only way that they're going to see you is if you show up authentically, if you show up who it is that you are, and trust
Mhm.
that the people who are meant to find you, connect with you, collaborate with you are going to be connected to you. Because if you are coming in with a frequency or with energy that is not the kind that, or the people that you want to attract, you're going to walk out of there connecting with people that are not in your highest and best, that are not going to be in alignment with who it is that you truly are. And so what I would invite you guys to do is to really just get yourself conscious, take some breaths, and to really stand in the power of who it is that you are, because no one's going to hand you a silver platter and tell you that you have the permission to do so. You may be out there thinking that someone's going to hand it to you. I can tell you that they're not, and the permission comes from within. And so I would really invite you guys to be who it is that you are, instead of morphing yourself to be something that you were never born to be. Your light is valuable. Your light is important. It is so crucial that you shine it, especially now in this world. And I hope that you all lead from this place, instead of, shifting and adapting to be in rooms.
I love that. Thank you so much. And so, how can people get a hold of you if they want to work with you?
Yeah. So what I would invite everybody to, well, first of all, please connect with me across social media. My handle's at Wendy Page Sterling, and Page is with Paige, Sterling spelled like silver. And you guys are welcome. I would love to connect with everybody who's out there. You guys are welcome to go to my website, wendypagesterling.com. And if you're curious to hear anything more about what I do, there's an easy way from my website for you guys to be able to connect. And we can schedule a conversation where you can share a little bit more about what it is that, perhaps you're feeling disconnected. And I'm happy to support you and be that guiding light.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Elaine. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Self Authority Podcast. One of my favorite takeaways from this conversation is that so many women become experts at reading other people while forgetting to listen to themselves. We spend years looking outside ourselves for reassurance, permission, and certainty, when the voice you've been searching for has been there all along. That doesn't mean ignoring advice from others. It means learning to recognize the difference between someone else's expectations and your own inner knowing. If you found this episode helpful, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a little more self-authority in their life. Until next time, I'm Elaine Belson, the Self-Authority Coach. And remember, self-authority isn't something you build, it's something you nurture. Take care.